Chapter 2980. The two people in front of him spoke so arrogantly. It could be seen that their background was not simple. Could it be that they were from Penglai Palace? If that was the case, then once these two people sent the news back to Penglai Palace, it would not be good news for their heaven-shaking faction. Although the heaven-shaking faction's current power was not small, it was nothing in front of the Penglai Palace. As long as Penglai Palace wanted to destroy them, it would definitely not be a difficult thing. For a moment, Lu Jiangang looked at the two people in front of him and did not know what to say. Gao Hanchun also noticed the movement on Lu Jiangang's side. Suddenly, he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a look of surprise. "May I know which faction you two are from?" Gao Hanchun slowly walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. His calm face was full of politeness, but his eyes flashed with a light that only he understood. He had stayed in Penglai Island for so many years and had seen all kinds of methods. Naturally, he would not be frightened by a few simple words from the other party. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Gao Hanchun's expression and already knew that Gao Hanchun was not someone who was easy to fool. If they did not make it clear, they would not be able to leave smoothly. After thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly thought of a faction. 100 Flowers Gate. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her chin slightly. When she talked about the 100 Flowers Gate, her face was full of pride and pride. She did not know anything about the other sections. Whether it was Penglai Palace or Crimson Moon Sect, they were all famous for their strength. With Bewitching and her cultivation, as long as they made a move, they would be completely exposed. However, she still had some confidence in her medical skills. Although she had not seen the medical skills of 100 Flowers Gate, she believed that there would be no problem in hiding it with her medical skills. Hearing the three words 100 Flowers Gate, the faces of Gao Hanchun and others changed. However, this result was much better than hearing that the other party was from Penglai Palace. Lu Jiangang's face became very ugly. He didn't expect that he would actually provoke people from the four major forces. Although the members of the 100 Flowers Gate were not like the members of the Penglai Palace and the Crimson Moon Sect, who would attack without warning, among the four major factions, the 100 Flowers Gate was the one that no one wanted to offend. That was because the doctors of the 100 Flowers Gate were truly quite capable, and their ability to recruit them was even more impressive. "So the two of you are from the 100 Flowers Gate." "My apologies," Lu Jiangang hurriedly said. Gui Jun also walked over to Bailey Hongzhuang and Li Qiye's side. He looked at the two of them in surprise and uncertainty. "Since the two of you are from the 100 Flowers Gate, may I ask if you can show your token?" As soon as he said that, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's faces turned cold. Their sharp gazes shot straight at Gui Jun. "I didn't know that the people of our 100 Flowers Gate would need to show a token to someone from the heaven-shaking sect. Aren't you overestimating you?" Deep displeasure and anger flashed across Di Beichen's face. His words became even more impolite. Since they had already pretended to this point, they could only keep up the pretense. They had no idea what the so-called token was, so the only thing they could do was keep up the pretense. Chapter 2981. Gao Hanchun's expression became more and more complicated when he saw the atmosphere between them become more and more tense. Originally, according to his judgment, the two people in front of him could not be from the 100 Flowers Gate. They were very likely tricking him. However, the two people's expressions were flawless. He could not help but wonder if he had made a mistake. Were they really from the 100 Flowers sect? From what I know, the people from the 100 Flowers sect don't go out often. Have the two of you come to Emerald Island to treat the master of the Qinghong gang? Gao Hanchun asked. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. They both hesitated. They had heard of the Qinghong gang before. It was said that the Qinghong gang was a local organization on Emerald Island. They were originally on par with the Heaven-Shaking gang, but the Heaven-Shaking gang had developed too quickly in the past 2 years, so they had surpassed them. However, they had never heard of whether the master of the Qinghong gang was sick or not. If Gao Hanchun had purposely said something that did not exist to test them, then all the lies they had said before would be exposed if they said yes. How they should answer was truly a problem. If they said no and Gao Hanchun continued to ask, they would not know how to answer either. This was truly a huge problem. When the people in the restaurant heard that Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching were from the Hundred Flowers sect, their attitudes had changed. When they looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching again, their gazes were filled with reverence. Now that they heard Gao Hanchuan's words, they all understood. I heard that the master of the Qinghong gang, Yi Lifei, had some problems with his body. It seems that he hasn't been cured yet, so Yi Lifei hasn't appeared recently. In that case, it's very likely that these two people from the Hundred Flowers sect were invited by Yi Lifei to treat him? Perhaps. The disciples of the Hundred Flowers sect don't usually leave Hundred Flowers Island. Only someone of Yi Lifei's status would be able to invite them. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching originally did not know how to answer, but after learning that Yi Lifei was indeed sick, they made a decision. Since you know, then why are you still obstructing me? If there's a delay, can you bear the responsibility? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Gao Hanchun coldly. As far as I know, the Great Saiyan Gang's power on the Emerald Island is much more stable than your heaven-shaking gang. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the faces of Gao Hanchun and all the heaven-shaking faction members turned ugly. Some of them even glared at Bailey Hongzhuang. Gao Hanchun came personally this time because the heaven-shaking faction's movements on Emerald Island were too big recently. The Saiyan Great Faction could no longer stand by and watch. Using this reason, Yi Lifei had already expressed his dissatisfaction. Gao Hanchun came this time to explain to Yi Lifei. Given his pride, he naturally did not want to explain to Yi Lifei. However, a powerful dragon could not defeat a local snake. The Green Great Gang was ultimately a local faction of Emerald Island. In this place, they were indeed inferior to the Green Great Gang. Now that he had been slapped in the face by Bailey Hongzhuang in front of everyone, one could imagine how he felt. Chapter 2982. Fuck, this Gao Hanchun is really something. He can still laugh even after being put in such a situation. Xiao Hei could not help but be dumbfounded when she saw Gao Hanchuan's reaction. Logically speaking, they should have been asked to leave right away. She did not expect Gao Hanchun to still be so insistent, as if he had not heard the words that had slapped them in the face. This is why Gao Hanchun is so scary. Xiao Bai shook her head. This guy still doesn't believe that Master and the others are really from the Hundred Flowers faction. That's why he said those words to test them. He's completely forcing Master and the others into a dead end. That damned guy, I really want to bite his neck off. A fierce look flashed across Bai Shi's eyes. Unfortunately, he was no match for Gao Hanchun at his current level of strength. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching felt helpless as well. This Gao Hanchun was simply a dogskin plaster. However, his psychological endurance was indeed admirable. However, they did not even know what the leader of the Great Saiyan Gang looked like. Gao Hanchun did not look like he was joking at all. If they followed him and were exposed, they would really be surrounded by two gangs. The situation would be even worse than it was now. Beichin, what should we do? Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but ask Beichin through voice transmission. This was really a difficult situation to solve. Beichin's mind was also spinning as he tried to think of a solution. However, it was a dead end in front of him. There's no other way. I'm afraid we can only take a gamble. Beichin said in a low voice. The only thing we can bet on is that the relationship between the Great Saiyan Gang and the Heaven-Shaking faction is not good. I think this is very likely. One was a local force of Emerald Island, while the other was an extremely arrogant gang within their own sphere of influence. Logically speaking, the possibility of them having a good relationship was very small. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her phoenix eyes. Her eyes that were as bright as glass flashed with determination. They could only take a gamble. Gui Jun was already very dissatisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang's arrogant attitude. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang had fallen silent, he couldn't help but ridicule. Why aren't you saying anything? Could it be that the imposter is afraid of being exposed, so he doesn't dare to agree? Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Gui Jun coldly. We just don't want to go with you. Don't try to goad me. Let's go. You'd better be mentally prepared. Bailey Hongzhuang crossed her arms in front of her chest and her face was full of disdain. She didn't look guilty at all. Instead, she looked like she was waiting for the heaven-shaking faction to be slapped in the face. Since that's the case, it's getting late. Let's set off together. Gao Hanchun still had a faint smile on his face. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang didn't ignore the ruthlessness in the depths of his eyes. On the way to the Great Cyan Gang, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were also very tormented. They only hoped to find an opportunity to leave. However, Gao Hanchun and the others already hated them to the extreme. They surrounded the two of them tightly along the way, not giving them any chance to escape. Under such helpless circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived at the Great Cyan Gang together. Chapter 2983. Boss Yi, long time no see. Gao Hanchun had a fake but warm smile on his face. He looked at Yi Lifei as if he had seen a good friend he hadn't seen in a long time. He was in an extremely good mood. Yi Lifei's face was also brimming with joy. Boss Gao is truly a rare guest. You actually have time to visit me today. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up Yi Li. Yi Lifei was already around 50 years old. He wasn't as strong as Gao Hanchun in his prime, but his majesty and aura weren't any weaker. It seemed that he had stayed on Penglai Island for much longer than Gao Hanchun. Boss Yi, I heard that you haven't been feeling well recently, so I invited people from the 100 Flowers Gate to treat you. As a matter of fact, I just happened to meet people from the 100 Flowers Gate on my way here, so I came with them. Gao Hanchun smiled as he introduced Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen to Yi Lifei. However, in the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, his smile was like a knife hidden behind a smile. Hearing this, Yi Lifei's gaze couldn't help but fall on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. At that moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but feel nervous. If Yi Lifei directly exposed them, then the two of them would have to prepare to fight their way out. At the same time, Gao Hanchun was also silently sizing up Yi Lifei, Bailey Hongzhuang, and Di Beichen's expressions. He still didn't quite believe that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were really from the 100 Flowers Gate. Now, as long as Yi Lifei confirmed it, he would know the result. For a moment, the atmosphere was rather strange. In the next moment, a smile gradually appeared on Yi Lifei's face. Boss Gao is truly considerate. This is an old illness of mine, and it's been acting up quite badly recently. That's why I specially invited an expert from the 100 Flowers Gate to treat me. As soon as these words came out, the originally strange atmosphere suddenly calmed down. Lu Jiangang and Gui Jun couldn't help but look at each other. Their expressions were rather ugly. They didn't think that these two people really were from the 100 Flowers Gate. In that case, didn't they offend two people they shouldn't have? This was really troublesome. Because the members of the 100 Flowers Gate rarely left 100 Flowers Island, many people subconsciously ignored their influence. However, at their level, they knew very well that if the 100 Flowers Gate really wanted to deal with someone, it was often impossible to guard against. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. It seemed that they had made the right bet. At the very least, he hadn't lost yet. Gao Hanchun was clearly surprised by this result. Even though he concealed it well, the flash of surprise in his eyes did not escape Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' eyes. Then these two experts from the 100 Flowers Gate came at just the right time to treat Sect Master Yi. Why don't we let them treat you now? Gao Hanchun probed without batting an eyelid. A smile appeared on Yi Lifei's face. If gang leader Gao doesn't mind, I'll let them treat me first. Gao Hanchun nodded. Of course I don't mind. Right now, the most important thing is Sect Master Ye's illness. Nothing else is urgent. In that case, I won't be polite. Yi Lifei turned to Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen and said, please. Chapter 2984. As soon as he entered the room, the smile on Yi Lifei's face disappeared. His gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang and Gao Zhinshan became as sharp as a knife. Just who are you two? Why are you pretending to be disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate? A powerful aura surged from Yi Lifei's body. If Bailey Hongzhuang and Gao Zhinshan dared to have any other thoughts, Yi Lifei would definitely take their lives. Gang leader Yi, why are you so sure that we're not disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate? Di Beichen asked calmly. He did not panic at all because of Yi Lifei's words. The disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate left a few days ago. I don't think the 100 Flowers Gate would send 2 groups of people for my old illness. A sharp light flashed through Yi Lifei's eyes. Cut the crap. Why are you pretending to be disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate and coming here? Bewitching raised his hands and placed them in front of his chest. Gang leader Yi, calm down. Why don't we make a deal? Hearing that, Yi Lifei could not help but sneer. Why do you think you have the right to make a deal with me? You're like turtles in a jar right now. If gang leader Yi wanted to expose us, you would have done so in front of gang leader Gao. Since you've only exposed us after coming here, I'm sure you don't have a good impression of the heaven-shaking gang like us. Or perhaps you don't want to help the heaven-shaking gang at all. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a dazzling light. Her face was brimming with confidence and her voice was filled with certainty. If they hadn't been clear about the specific situation before coming here, they had completely understood after what had just happened. Yi Lifei frowned slightly. Looking at the 2 familiar faces before him, he was not in a good mood either. My relationship with the heaven-shaking gang is not that good, but the 2 of you have no right to make a deal with me. Don't think you've seen through me just because you've seen through a little. Killing the 2 of you is not a problem for me at all. Yi Lifei's voice was cold. He did not like people pretending to be smart in front of him. I'll treat your illness, and you'll help us continue to cover it up. How about that? Bailey Hongzhuang went straight to the point. Yi Lifei, who originally intended to directly refuse, could not help but be stunned after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words. He said, "You will treat my illness?" That's right. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head. Her expression was calm. However, Yi Lifei suddenly laughed out loud. Even the people from the 100 Flowers Gate couldn't cure me, and you say you can? What a joke. Seeing Yi Lifei like this, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't say anything. She just looked at Yi Lifei quietly and smiled. Yi Lifei laughed for a moment before he could no longer continue laughing. At this time, Bailey Hongzhuang spoke up. The people of 100 Flowers Gate can't cure you, but that doesn't mean that I can't cure you. If I didn't come today, you wouldn't have lived past 3 months at most. It's up to you whether you want to believe me or not. As soon as she saw Yi Lifei, Bailey Hongzhuang noticed his thick aura of illness. Even though he hid his aura and presence extremely well as a doctor, Bailey Hongzhuang could still tell at a glance. Chapter 2985. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Yi Lifei's expression changed abruptly. His pupils dilated, and he no longer looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with the same contempt he had before. I won't live for more than 3 months. That was what the disciples of the 100 Flowers sect had told him. However, the disciples of the 100 Flowers sect had made it clear that he was terminally ill. Even they had no way to treat him. Over the past few days, those words had been lingering in his mind, and his heart was filled with despair. He had finally obtained his current status and power, but he was going to die soon. The feeling was enough to make him break down. If it had been any other day, he would have stood up long ago when the Zhentian faction was abusing their power on Emerald Island. However, he was not in the mood to do anything with his body's condition. However, the person in front of him had not even checked his pulse, yet he had said such a thing. How did he know? Looking at the change in Yi Lifei's expression, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved slightly. It seems that gang leader Yi already has an idea in his heart. This is a good deal for us, so why not do it? Yi Lifei fell into silence. He did not immediately agree to Bailey Hongzhuang's deal. After a moment, Yi Lifei slowly said, I really don't like the Zhentian faction, but can you really cure me? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. There's no need to lie about something that will be exposed very soon. If faction leader Yi doesn't believe me, I can help you relieve some of your pain. However, your condition can't be cured immediately. It will take some time. If we let faction leader Gao and the others wait outside for too long, I'm afraid it's not very appropriate. Yi Lifei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in shock and doubt. If it had been any other day, he would not have believed her. However, he no longer had any hope. At least the person in front of him could give him a glimmer of hope. He could not give up such a great temptation. Alright, I promise you. Deal. After Bailey Hongzhuang took Yi Lifei's pulse, she suddenly frowned. She had only looked at Yi Lifei's situation before and had a certain judgment in her heart. But after taking his pulse, she found that the situation seemed to be a bit more complicated than she thought. Noticing the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's brows, Yi Lifei's heart couldn't help but tighten. Is my illness incurable? Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Yi Lifei and shook her head. It's time for gang leader Yi to pay more attention to the people around you. It's very dangerous to be poisoned without knowing it. Hearing this, Yi Lifei could not help but be stunned. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment, his face filled with disbelief. You're saying, someone poisoned me? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. That's right. This is impossible. Yi Lifei hurriedly denied. It's impossible for the people around me to poison me. The people from the 100 Flowers Gate never said that I was poisoned. If their medical skills were better than mine, why couldn't they cure you? Bailey Hongzhuang asked in return. Then how can you prove that I was poisoned? Yi Lifei still didn't believe her. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. She did not feel the slightest bit unhappy because of Yi Lifei's doubts. She took out a silver needle from her needle bag. Chapter 2986. As Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Lifei followed Yi Lifei into the room, Lu Jiangang couldn't help but frown. Boss, are those two really disciples of the 100 Flowers sect? Gao Hanchun frowned slightly. He had always been very sure of his judgment, but after seeing Yi Lifei's attitude, he began to doubt himself. Whether they are or not, we'll know once they come out. But Yi Lifei has already confirmed their identities. Lu Jiangang said doubtfully. Gui Jun smiled faintly. Second brother, you're thinking too simply. Yi Lifei is already very jealous of their heaven-shaking faction's development in the past 2 years. Plus, we've created a reputation on Emerald Island recently, so he's already very dissatisfied with us. Now that he saw us bring 2 guys in, he naturally won't reveal the truth to us, so we can't determine whether they are really us or not. Gao Hanchun nodded. Gui Jun's opinion is the same as mine. Let's wait for now. If those guys are really fakes, Yi Lifei doesn't have to help them hide. Lu Jiangang only understood after hearing this. His brain wasn't as good as Gao Hanchun's and Gui Jun's. The Great Saiyan Gang is very dissatisfied with us now. If we start a conflict with them on Emerald Island, it will be very disadvantageous for us. What should we do? Lu Jiangang lowered his voice. Originally, this kind of matter didn't need to alarm Gao Hanchun personally, but because the Great Saiyan Gang had already expressed their dissatisfaction, they had no choice but to come personally. Once the Great Saiyan Gang used this rumor to attack them, then the situation would become much more complicated. Yi Lifei's hidden illness has been acting up recently. He can't even take care of himself. Who knows, he won't be able to live for long. We don't need to worry too much. Coming here today is just a formality. Once Yi Lifei dies, we'll take the opportunity to swallow up the Great Saiyan Gang. This way, our heaven-shaking faction will become even more powerful. A meaningful smile appeared on Gao Hanchun's lips. He had been thinking about this plan for a long time. An old guy like Yi Lifei was no longer suitable to continue living in this kind of environment. Dying early and reincarnating early was the best. Lu Jiangang and Gui Jun looked at each other, and a happy smile appeared in their eyes. Yi Lifei still didn't believe Bailey Hongzhuang's words, but after seeing how confident Bailey Hongzhuang was, he chose to shut his mouth. He didn't believe that his trusted aide would poison him. However, he had experienced a lot of things to get to where he was now, so he couldn't guarantee it. However, when he saw that the silver needle in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand was gradually turning black, his face turned extremely ugly. How is this possible? Yi Lifei was in disbelief, but he forced himself to calm down. The people from the 100 Flowers Gate didn't find out that I was poisoned. At this moment, Yi Lifei no longer doubted Bailey Hongzhuang. He just lowered his voice and expressed his doubts. Chapter 2987. Yi Lifei stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in a daze. The latter's words were like a hammer smashing into his brain, causing him to be in a daze. He had always thought that his old illness had relapsed and was extremely serious. He had never thought that someone had poisoned him. According to what you're saying, the other party must have understood my condition very well, which is why they poisoned me like this? At this moment, Yi Lifei's gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang had completely changed. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang was his only hope for survival. The problem that the disciples of the Hundred Flowers Gate had not discovered had been discovered by Bailey Hongzhuang. Just this point alone was enough to prove that Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were better than the disciples of the Hundred Flowers Gate. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yi Lifei with admiration. "You're not too stupid. The other party could have chosen this method of poisoning based on your condition. This way, no one would know that you died without knowing why." Yi Lifei only felt a chill rising from his feet to his spine. In that case, he really should thank Gao Hanchun. If Gao Hanchun had not brought these two people here, he would not have known that someone was trying to harm him until he died. "Master, how should I address you?" Yi Lifei clasped his hands in greeting. He had become extremely respectful towards Bailey Hongzhuang. "Di Bei," Bailey Hongzhuang pointed at Di Beichen next to her and said, "This is my big brother, Di Chen." "I see. I'm sorry for the disrespect. Please forgive my previous rudeness." Yi Lifei's attitude changed very quickly, but it was also very natural. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. "Sect leader Yi, you don't have to be so polite. I've said before that this deal between us is a win-win situation. Since second young Master D has already seen through that I was poisoned, I wonder if there is still hope for my condition to be cured?" Yi Lifei's probing question made even that dignified face of his could not help but reveal a nervous expression. No one wanted to die, especially someone in his position. He did not want to die even more. "I've already answered your question when I first entered the room." Yi Lifei was stunned for a moment before a smile appeared on his face. "Thank you, young Masters D. From now on, you are my Qinghong Gang's VIP guests. No matter what it is, as long as it is something my Qinghong Gang can do, I will not refuse. I'm very happy to have a friend like Gang Leader Yi." Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen smiled. It seemed that Gao Hanchun had done them a huge favor today. Originally, they were still thinking about how to avoid the heaven-shaking faction's pursuit. Now, Gao Hanchun not only arranged a reasonable identity for them, but also helped them find an ally. This was really a great thing. Bailey Hongzhuang gave Yi Lifei a few simple needles, and Yi Lifei felt the pain in his body ease a lot. His eyes suddenly became brighter. He no longer doubted that he had met two experts today. This also proved that his life was not meant to end. "Sect leader Yi, we still have one more thing to ask for your help." Di Beichen said. "Young Master D, please speak." "We still have two friends. I wonder if we can bring them to stay with the Qinghong Gang?" Chapter 2988. Yi Lifei, who originally had some doubts about the identity of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, suddenly understood everything after hearing Di Beichen's request. The others did not know whether the murder of the Gao Hanchun brothers was true or not, but he knew very well that it was true. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had appeared out of nowhere and directly expressed their dissatisfaction with the heaven-shaking faction, he was a little puzzled. However, when the number of people increased to 4, the truth was obvious. However, whether or not Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were the murderers of the Gao Hanchun brothers, he did not care at all. In other words, to him, the enemy of his enemy was his friend. From this point of view, the alliance between them was more reliable. It was not that he did not know about the recent movements of the heaven-shaking faction, and he was also very clear about what the ambitious Gao Hanchun was planning. It was precisely because of this that his hatred for Gao Hanchun had reached a peak. Unfortunately, it would not be easy for him to protect the entire Great Saiyan Gang as he did not have long to live. However, as long as he could keep his life, the heaven-shaking faction would have to check their teeth if they wanted to swallow the Great Saiyan Gang. Young Master D's friends are also my Great Saiyan Gang's distinguished guests. Naturally, we welcome them. Why don't I send someone to invite the two of them over now?" Yi Lifei's smile was polite and modest, with a hint of intimacy. Di Beichen nodded and wrote a note on the side and handed it to Yi Lifei. "Then I'll have to trouble Gang Leader Yi. Give this note to them and they will come over." "How is this troublesome? But my body, I'll have to trouble the two young Masters D." "Don't worry, Gang Leader Yi. My second brother's medical skills have always been praised. As long as he says there's no problem, there will naturally be no problem. Di Beichen's face rippled with a faint smile. Since Yi Lifei had already expressed his sincerity to them, they would naturally let Yi Lifei have no worries. The smile on Yi Lifei's face grew even wider. This was the happiest day he had in a long time. He immediately ordered his subordinates to go to the inn and invite them over. After the discussion, Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Lifei followed Yi Lifei out of the room. Sect Leader Gao, thank you so much. The 100 Flowers Gate's medical skills are truly worthy of their reputation. My old ailment is already much better. Yi Lifei smiled and walked in front of Gao Hanchun, but a fierce and bloodthirsty light quietly flashed in the depths of his eyes. Where was the slightest bit of affection? Hearing Yi Lifei's words, Gao Hanchun sized up Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Lifei without batting an eyelid. The doubt in his heart grew stronger. According to the information he received, the disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate should have been here a few days ago. Could it be that the information he received was wrong? Or did Yi Lifei, the old fox, have a trick up his sleeve and invite the disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate to treat him twice? Or perhaps, these two fellows had made some sort of deal with Yi Lifei? Gao Hanchuan's mind spun as he constantly pondered where this question came from. However, he couldn't give a definite answer for the time being. Chapter 2989. I'm really happy that Gang Leader Ye's old illness can be alleviated. I've been very worried about Gang Leader Ye's health all this time. Gao Hanchun said with a smile. Yi Lifei cupped his hands. I've troubled Gang Leader Gao to worry about me. My old illness has been with me for many years. Although it hurts when it flares up, it doesn't have much of an effect. It's fine. Hearing Yi Lifei's words, Gao Hanchun couldn't help but sneer in his heart. He knew very well that Yi Lifei wouldn't live for long. What was the use of pretending to be strong in front of him now? The Great Saiyan Gang would fall into his hands sooner or later. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at Yi Lifei and Gao Hanchuan's false civility and sighed in their hearts. In fact, everyone present was discerning. These two foxes couldn't wait to kill each other in their hearts, but on the surface, they still had to pretend to be good brothers. It really wasn't easy. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen didn't stay for long before Yi Lifei arranged for them to rest. Clearly, there were still many things to discuss between the Great Saiyan Gang and the Heaven-Shaking Gang. After all, Gao Hanchun had personally come this time to explain to Yi Lifei. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen stayed in the house. Not long after, when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying were led into the house by the Great Saiyan Gang's cultivators. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were safe and sound, Xiren and Shangguan Yingying both heaved a sigh of relief. It's great that you're fine. Previously, when they found out that Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying were forced to follow Gao Hanchun and the others to the Great Saiyan Gang, they were almost worried to death. The two of them even planned to kidnap them and fight, but they didn't receive any news, so they didn't act rashly for the time being. Then, they actually received an invitation from the Great Saiyan Gang, which left them completely dumbfounded. However, after seeing Di Beichen's handwritten note, the two of them agreed to come together. How did you two do it? Is the Qinghong Gang safe? Xiren walked in front of Di Beichen, his handsome and refined face filled with curiosity. Di Beichen nodded. Right now, we can be considered as allies of the Great Green Gang, so we don't have to worry about the Heaven-Shaking Gang's search. As soon as he said this, when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying both widened their eyes, their faces filled with disbelief. Aren't the two of you too amazing? How did you find such a powerful ally in such a short time? You'll have to ask Hongzhuang about that. Di Beichen chuckled. Xiren and Wenxinya's gazes immediately fell upon Bailey Hongzhuang, their faces filled with curiosity as they waited for Bailey Hongzhuang's reply. Gang leader Yi is injured. I promised to treat him, but he helped us hide it. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Just like that, we formed an alliance. Bailey Hongzhuang concisely recounted what had happened before. Hearing that, Xiren couldn't help but give Bailey Hongzhuang a thumbs up. Amazing! Hongzhuang, I'm really admiring you more and more now. Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but sigh. You guys can really turn danger into safety every time. I thought it was really over. You almost scared me to death. Chapter 2990. If Yi Lifei and Gao Hanchun were very good friends, then in the previous situation, even if she and Di Beichen did their best, she was afraid that it would be a dead end. Fortunately, God was on their side. Then according to you, we should stay in the Great Cyan Gang for the time being? Di Beichen nodded. At present, the entire Emerald Island is being searched by the Heaven-Shaking Gang. If we stay here, the Heaven-Shaking Gang won't have the guts to search. The longer we delay, the more disadvantageous it will be for the Heaven-Shaking Gang. As long as they can't find us, everyone's doubts will become louder and louder. Next, we should wait to watch a good show. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly, and a confident and dazzling light lingered on her face. There was always a light at the end of the tunnel. This was probably the situation they were in now. In that case, Gao Hanchun has really found a big problem for himself. Xiren couldn't help but chuckle. Previously, they were chased out by the Heaven-Shaking Gang like stray dogs. That feeling was really uncomfortable. Now that they finally had a safe place to stay, they were really relieved. I'm afraid the conflict between the Great Cyan Gang and the Heaven-Shaking Gang isn't small. Gang leader Yi was even poisoned. Maybe this has something to do with the Heaven-Shaking Gang. Bailey Hongzhuang said in a deep voice. Although Yi Lifei's performance was very vague, she still noticed the subtle changes in the former's expression. When she said that Yi Lifei was poisoned, Yi Lifei obviously thought of something in his mind, but he didn't say it out loud. In addition, Yi Lifei and Gao Hanchun's previous conversation had a hidden edge. Yi Lifei obviously deliberately showed that he was still very powerful in front of Gao Hanchun. From this, she could analyze a lot of things. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with admiration. It seems that we have the same idea. Xiren and Shangguan Yinging looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Lifei's tacit understanding. Although they didn't know why they came to this conclusion, they understood that the conflict between the two gangs was huge. Now I can finally have a good rest. Xiren sat down at the side. Although he hadn't been busy with other things for the past few days, his spirit had always been tense. This kind of mental exhaustion was even more uncomfortable than physical exhaustion. Let's take a break first. Gang leader Yi and Gao Hanchun are discussing something. When Gao Hanchun and the others leave, gang leader Yi should come to us, Di Beichen said. In that case, gang leader Yi should also know that we are the ones who killed Gao Hanxia and the others. Xiren said faintly. Although it was a question, his tone was firm. What does it matter if he knows or not? Di Beichen raised his eyebrows slightly. Even if he has some guesses in his heart, he won't say it. It wasn't until Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had dinner in the house that Yi Lifei appeared in front of them. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others noticed that there was still some anger left on Yi Lifei's face. It seemed that his conversation with Gao Hanchun and the others before was not pleasant. However, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, Yi Lifei's face quickly filled with a smile. I talked with Gao Hanchun and the others for a long time, and I only came now. Sorry for the lack of hospitality. Chapter 2991. As soon as Yi Lifei entered the room, he noticed Xiren and Shangguan Yinging. He couldn't help but ask, Young Masters D, I wonder if you can introduce these two new friends to me? These two are our friends, Wen Ran and his wife, Shangguan Ying. Di Beichen introduced. So it's young Master Wen and Miss Shangguan. I'm late and have not received you well. Please forgive me. Yi Lifei could be said to be extremely polite. However, his life was in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang, so he naturally had to be extremely polite. Xiren and Shangguan Yinging saw that Yi Lifei, as the leader of the Qinghong Gang, was so polite. They sighed in their hearts. Hongzhuang's ability was really amazing. It was really not easy to make the leader of the gang act like this. Greetings, Leader Yi. Leader Yi is too polite. We can't afford it, Xiren said with a smile. You are all my Qinghong Gang's distinguished guests. If you need anything, just say it. I will definitely do it, Yi Lifei said with a smile. Xiren and Shangguan Yinging looked at each other. This Yi Lifei was much more pleasing to the eye than Gao Hanchun. Leader Yi, it seems that you didn't have a good conversation with Gao Hanchun and the others? Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. She was not interested in the grudges between the Qinghong gang and the Zhentian gang. However, she was very interested in destroying the Zhentian gang. Yi Lifei was stunned for a moment, then nodded. Gao Hanchun and the others are getting more and more insatiable. Although the Emerald Island is under the jurisdiction of the Penglai Palace, people from the Penglai Palace rarely come here. As the largest local force on the Emerald Island, my Qinghong gang naturally has a lot of influence on the Emerald Island. Recently, the Zhentian gang has caused a huge commotion on the Emerald Island in order to find the murderer. Many people have already questioned them, so I directly told them that they can't continue like this. Gao Hanchun came to my Qinghong gang today to explain this matter. However, he actually asked me to help him find the murderer. As long as the murderer is not found, they will definitely not leave. At this point, the anger on Yi Lifei's face became even more intense. Yi Lifei had commanded for so many years. Since when did it become Gao Hanchun's turn to order him around? With the Green Great Gang's strength, we should be able to reject their request, right? Bewitching asked. Yi Lifei nodded. Of course, I rejected them. However, Gao Hanchun seemed to know about the problem with my body. That's why he was so arrogant. In that case, gang leader, you should have some guesses about who poisoned you? Bailey Hongzhuang's deep black eyes flashed with a bright light. She stared at Yi Lifei as if she could see through everything. Yi Lifei narrowed his eyes. Now that his life was in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang, they were already in the same boat. Naturally, he didn't mind telling them about the situation. If I'm not wrong, it should be my trusted aide. At this point, a look of hatred appeared on Yi Lifei's face. Anyone who tasted this kind of betrayal would feel very unhappy. Previously, someone told me that they saw him and Gao Hanchun walking out of a place together. However, I believed it too much and didn't have any other thoughts. Chapter 2992. Hearing Yi Lifei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching could not help but look at each other. It seemed that the truth was just as they had thought. Yi Lifei had really been tricked by Gao Hanchun. May I know what sect leader Yi plans to do now? Bewitching inquired. Yi Lifei's gaze gradually deepened. My trusted aide will still send me the medicine tonight. I hope that second young Master D can help me appraise it. If it really is him, I won't let him off so easily. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Naturally, that won't be a problem. I'll need some time to cure sect leader Ye's old illness. During this process, I can't let you continue to be poisoned. Otherwise, wouldn't all my efforts have been in vain? Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Yi Lifei suddenly stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in shock. He asked in disbelief, Second young Master D, do you mean that my old illness can be completely cured? He had thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to cure him of the poison and prolong his originally short life. Just this point alone was enough to make him extremely happy. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had now told him that not only could she cure him of the poison, but she could also cure his old illness completely. One had to know that his old illness had been with him for many years. Over the years, he had invited many doctors to treat him, but none of them had any effect. He had gradually given up and only hoped that the pain could be alleviated a little. That was already the happiest thing for him. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had now said that she could cure his old illness. How could he not be excited? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded very naturally. Of course. I had intended to cure your old illness anyway. However, when I examined you, I found that you had been poisoned. Looking at the confident and calm Bailey Hongzhuang before him, Yi Lifei was so surprised that he did not know what to say. All these years, he had been unable to make a breakthrough in his cultivation, which was also related to his old illness. He had almost believed that he would be stuck at this level for the rest of his life, but now, Bailey Hongzhuang's words had rekindled his hope. It was simply too delightful. Second young Master D, if you can cure my old illness, then you will be my benefactor. Yi Lifei's eyes became unusually bright, and his weathered face seemed to radiate with glory in an instant. His entire person seemed to be in high spirits. Sect Master, your medicine is here. At this moment, a voice rang out from outside the room. The faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but change slightly. Fortunately, when they spoke, They used Yuan Qi to seal the entire room and didn't leak out the slightest bit of their voices. Otherwise, the person outside the door might have heard their conversation. "Come in." A man walked in with a bowl of soup in his hands and placed the medicine on the table. He then sized up Bailey Hongzhuang and the others before saying to Yi Lifei, "Sect Master, you must remember to drink your medicine." Yi Lifei nodded. The expression on his face was the same as ever, but a dim light flashed in the depths of his eyes. "I know. You may leave first." The man acknowledged and left, appearing to be very honest. If Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had not been so certain that Yi Lifei had been poisoned, it would have been very difficult for them to suspect this man. After the man left, Yi Lifei quickly looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and placed the silver needles into the medicine. Chapter 2993. That was because the silver needle was still as white as before, without the slightest hint of cyan. Could it be that my judgment was wrong? Yi Lifei was astonished. He thought for a while, and the only person who could have poisoned him was his trusted aide, because this soup had always been prepared by him and did not pass through anyone else's hands. Shengguan Yingying's face also showed a hint of surprise. If the other party did not poison the soup, then how did Yi Lifei get poisoned? Looking at everyone's expressions, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. She sprinkled some white powder into the soup bowl with her bare hands, and after dissolving it, Bailey Hongzhuang once again placed the silver needle into the soup bowl. When Bailey Hongzhuang took out the silver needle again, everyone clearly saw the faint cyan color on the silver needle, and this scene made everyone even more astonished. "What's going on?" Yi Lifei asked in shock. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Yi Lifei, and then explained, "With sect leader Ye's character, he must be very careful when doing things. If this poison was discovered by you so easily, how could their plan continue? This is a kind of camouflage. When they poisoned you, they added a substance to make the silver needle unable to detect the poison. However, the thing I sprinkled just now was able to dissolve this layer of camouflage, so the poison was completely revealed." Everyone's face showed a hint of understanding, and immediately looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with even more amazement in their eyes. They never knew that the method of poisoning could be so brilliant, it was simply impossible to guard against. If Bailey Hongzhuang had not shown them all, they would not have known at all. "Sect leader Yi, since they have done all of this to such an extreme, it proves that they are prepared to take your life completely." Bewitching looked at Yi Lifei. Among all of them, the shock in Yi Lifei's heart was the strongest. Yi Lifei nodded. "When I first drank the medicine, I also tested the poison with a silver needle. It was because there was no reaction that I kept drinking until now. It's precisely because he knows me too well that he thought of this move. It's hard to guard against a thief in your own home. I didn't expect that I would raise a traitor in the end." As he spoke, Yi Lifei suddenly looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others and said, "Everyone, can you help me conceal the fact that I have a cure for this poison for the time being? I want to take advantage of this opportunity to completely eliminate these traitors of my great Cyan gang and not give them any chance to escape." Yi Lifei's eyes were filled with a cold light, and the little bit of affection he had before had completely disappeared. It could be seen that the other party's actions had really chilled his heart. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "No problem. Thank you. If you want to leave Emerald Island after curing my illness, I can send you away directly. No one will dare to stop you. I will definitely send you to your destination safely. Many things may happen on Emerald Island soon. If you don't want to see these troubles, it would be best for you to leave as soon as possible." Following Yi Lifei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others understood that Yi Lifei was about to make a big move. This was probably going to be a bloodbath. Chapter 2994. If the Great Cyan Gang and the Heaven-Shaking Gang really fought, it would definitely be a fierce battle. In the past few years, the Great Cyan Gang and the Heaven-Shaking Gang had always been at peace. Although the Heaven-Shaking Gang had always crossed the line, Yi Lifei obviously did not intend to fight them head-on because the losses would be too great. However, the fact that the Heaven-Shaking Gang poisoned him had probably caused him great dissatisfaction. So now he was ready to cut off all means of retreat and fight the Heaven-Shaking Gang head-on. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others thought that the reason why Yi Lifei was so polite to them was that his life was in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang, but just now Yi Lifei proposed to send them away and did not want them to get involved in this dispute, which also proved Yi Lifei's true nature. Just based on this point, they felt that Yi Lifei was a real man. Compared to Gao Hanchun, who used despicable means behind his back, he was much more admirable. Gang leader Yi, since we are already allies, why don't we cooperate again? Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly said with a smile. Yi Lifei was slightly stunned and said, "Please speak. The Heaven-Shaking Gang is really too arrogant now, and we are extremely unhappy with them. As far as we know, recently many people have begun to suspect that the Heaven-Shaking Gang used pills to recruit gang members, and thus developed rapidly in the past 2 years. I wonder if this news is true?" Yi Lifei nodded, and a serious look quietly appeared on his face. The influence of this rumor is indeed not small, and many people have this suspicion, but I know very well that the Heaven-Shaking Gang did not use such means. It is just a rumor. The reason why the Heaven-Shaking Gang has developed so quickly in the past 2 years is related to Gao Hanchuan's method of buying people's hearts. Speaking of this, Yi Lifei could not help but sigh. Perhaps it was really because he was old, so over the years his ambition had become smaller and smaller, and he had missed many opportunities to develop. However, now that he had regained his life, his thoughts began to change. Since the Heaven-Shaking Gang wanted to annex the Great Saiyan Gang so much, why couldn't the Great Saiyan Gang annex the Heaven-Shaking Gang in turn? Until the last moment, the winner was still unknown. Since this rumor is getting more and more intense, why don't we help the Heaven-Shaking faction make this rumor true? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly as a dazzling light flashed in her clear eyes. Gao Hanchun wanted to use the Heaven-Shaking Association's power to kill the 4 of them, so she had to find a way to weaken the Heaven-Shaking Association's power. If a tiger had no teeth, it was just a paper tiger. There was no need to be afraid. Once the Heaven-Shaking faction was annexed by the Great Saiyan Gang, this was something that they would be happy to see. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the shock in Yi Lifei's eyes intensified. I wonder how second young Master D intends to confirm this rumor? As long as someone finds a pill that can control others from the Heaven-Shaking faction's cultivators, then the Heaven-Shaking faction will never be able to clear their name, right? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Chapter 2995. As the leader of the Great Saiyan Gang, Yi Lifei knew very well that the reason why the other forces hadn't found trouble with the Shocking Heavens faction so far was because the Shocking Heavens faction's actions hadn't touched their interests for the time being. But once it did, all the forces would definitely stand up at the first moment and absolutely wouldn't give the Shocking Heavens faction any chance. It's just that it's not easy to make this name true. I've only heard of that kind of pill that can control one's mind. There's no such thing. Yi Lifei said with a frown. He knew that using this point to attack the Shocking Heavens faction was the best way to attack them. Compared to a head-on battle between the 2 gangs that might be taken advantage of by other forces, this method was simply the best with the least loss and the best effect. Unfortunately, it was definitely not an easy thing to do. At this time, Di Baichen, Wen Xiren, and Shangguan Yinging all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a faint smile. Bailey Hongzhuang had already said that she wanted to create some trouble for the Shocking Heavens faction. They still didn't know what exactly she planned to do. Now that they heard Bailey Hongzhuang's idea, they already understood. Don't worry about this, Leader Yi. I have the pill. Bailey Hongzhuang said. She had already thought of this plan a long time ago. It was just that with just the few of them, they could at most cause a certain amount of damage to the Shocking Heavens faction's reputation. It wasn't enough to make the Shocking Heavens faction pay a heavy price. Now that they had the help of the Great Saiyan Gang, the effect wasn't as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. You have such a pill? Yi Lifei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. This kind of pill wasn't so easy to get. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. What we need to do now is to shift the blame. But to do all of this flawlessly, we still need Leader Ye's help. Second young Master D, don't worry. As long as we can take down the Shocking Heavens faction, there's nothing you need our gang to do. Yi Lifei patted his chest. Taking care of the Shocking Heavens faction was what he wanted to do the most. Bai Hongzhuang's method of getting along with others was undoubtedly a great help to him. Naturally, he would do anything he could. With Leader Ye's words, I can rest assured, Bai Hongzhuang said with a faint smile. Yi Lifei couldn't help but look at Bai Hongzhuang and others who had a tacit understanding with each other, and sighed in his heart. Perhaps Gao Hanchuan's biggest mistake was chasing after Bai Hongzhuang and the others, which caused him so much trouble. Right now, Gao Hanchun was still unaware of all this. If everything was really as Bai Hongzhuang said, then Gao Hanchun should be completely dumbfounded. Now, he no longer dared to underestimate these 4 newcomers who had just arrived at Penglai Island. Ordinary newcomers were nothing to be afraid of, but these 4 people were definitely not ordinary people. Just Bai Hongzhuang's superb medical skills were already very amazing, not to mention that they also had that kind of pill that could control people. Thinking about it, no matter who provoked them, it would be a huge trouble. Such people, whether it was looking for allies or doing other things, would be much easier than ordinary people. Yi Lifei couldn't help but rejoice. Fortunately, he and Bai Hongzhuang's group of 4 were allies and not enemies. Otherwise, with the existence of such an enemy, it would really make him restless. Chapter 2996. After coming up with a plan, Bai Hongzhuang didn't immediately take action. Instead, she asked Yi Lifei a lot of things about the forces related to Emerald Island. They only had this one chance. If they didn't deal a heavy blow to the heaven-shaking faction this time, then it wouldn't be easy to find such an opportunity in the future. After Yi Lifei rejected the request of the heaven-shaking faction and the others, Gao Hanchun and the others didn't care about it. However, their speed of hunting down the culprit became even faster. Not only Gui Jun and Lu Jiangang joined the search team, even Gao Hanchun himself started to act. Right now, everyone was criticizing the actions of the heaven-shaking faction, but as long as they could catch the other party and prove their innocence, then not only would they be able to eliminate all the negative influences from before, but they would also be able to raise the reputation of the heaven-shaking faction to another level. For the experienced and knowledgeable Gao Hanchun, he understood the opportunity behind this. Yi Lifei couldn't live for more than 3 months at most. In these 3 months, he wanted to let the forces on Emerald Island get used to the existence of the heaven-shaking faction. He wanted to use this opportunity to set up camp on Emerald Island. Once the time came to annex the Great Cyan Gang, everything would fall into place naturally. Yi Lifei immediately sent people to pay attention to the heaven-shaking faction's every move. If they got any useful information, they would immediately inform Bewitching and the others so that they could understand more. Bai Hongzhuang, in addition to treating Yi Lifei's illness every day, spent more time alone in the house in seclusion. Yi Lifei didn't know what Bai Hongzhuang was doing, but he didn't ask. He just waited for the day when Bai Hongzhuang was ready to take action. All of this was carried out quietly. Yi Lifei was also an extremely shrewd person. Although his body's condition was gradually improving, he still pretended to be terminally ill in front of others. Even if he wanted to show that his condition was good, everyone could see that he was strong in appearance but weak in reality. He wanted to take advantage of the current situation to numb his opponent and let everyone think that he was powerless to reverse the situation. Only when his opponent was completely relaxed could his counterattack achieve the best effect. Now, only a few of his trusted subordinates were helping him in secret. The others were completely unaware of it. 7 days later, Bai Hongzhuang and the others gathered together. Today was the day of their operation. The heaven-shaking faction has been searching the Emerald Island for 7 days, but they haven't found any traces. Everyone is getting more and more dissatisfied with the heaven-shaking faction's actions, and some people can't even hold back anymore. Yi Lifei's eyes flashed with a bright light. The more the heaven-shaking faction provoked the public's anger, the better it was for him. Leader Yi, have you made an appointment with the leader of Yunyang Gang? Bai Hongzhuang asked. Yi Lifei nodded. I've already made an appointment. When the time comes, as long as you give me the signal, I'll come out with Liang Qinghui. If that's the case, we'll head out first. Bai Hongzhuang smiled. I hope our plan today will be successful. Hearing Bai Hongzhuang's words, Yi Lifei's eyes flashed with excitement. He had been looking forward to this day for a long time. Then, I will also go prepare the invitation to Liang Qinghui, Yi Lifei said with a smile. Chapter 2997. When Xiren's eyes were filled with worry. According to his idea, this matter should be handed over to the Great Cyan Gang. This way, they wouldn't need to take any risks. However, Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang insisted on acting on their own, which made him feel helpless. Don't worry, Hongzhuang and I know what we're doing. We'll only look for the members of the Shocking Heavens gang who are alone. We won't put ourselves in danger. Di Baichen patted Xiren's shoulder and said with a smile. Xiren's brows furrowed. Even after listening to Di Baichen's words, he still didn't relax. How about Yingying and I act together? It's not good to always make the two of us wait. Since coming to Emerald Island, almost all the risks were taken by Di Baichen and Ying. The two of them had been quite safe, which made them feel very helpless. Hongzhuang and I were discovered because we didn't understand the situation, so we were forced to take all the risks. The two of you hid so well, which is a great thing. Tonight, Hongzhuang and I won't take much risk. What's more, with gang leader Yi here, he'll protect us. You can rest assured. Bailey Hongzhuang also nodded. Tonight, we're not going to fight head-on. We're going to outsmart them. We don't plan to fight at all. We're just going to use some poison. With their current cultivation, if they were to fight head-on, it would be really troublesome. However, if they used poison, it would be much easier. Bailey Hongzhuang spent a lot of energy preparing for today's action. She believed that there wouldn't be any problems. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen so insistent, although Xiren was somewhat helpless, he could only nod. All right, you two be more careful. Night shrouded the earth, and today's night seemed particularly dark. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen both changed into night clothes and shuttled through the night. Their goal today was very simple, and that was to find a single heaven-shaking faction cultivator and frame him. If anyone else noticed them, they would realize that the two of them had disguised themselves as the ones they had when they were stopped by the heaven-shaking faction on the square. In other words, the two of them were the murderers that the heaven-shaking faction had been searching for on Emerald Island all this time. After 7 days of searching, the cultivators of the heaven-shaking faction were no longer as enthusiastic as before, because they had already searched all the places they could find, but they still couldn't find any trace of these two people, as if they had disappeared into thin air. However, the sect leader did not say that they would give up, so they could only continue to search like this. However, they were no longer as focused as before. Among all the members of the heaven-shaking faction, the most depressed and despairing were Deng Liang and Kong Wei. They searched for traces of the two men like crazy, but in the end, there was no news at all. It really made them collapse to the extreme. I heard the news today. If we still can't find those two people, I'm afraid we'll have to stop searching. Deng Liang said gloomily. The sect leader and the others seem to be busy with other things recently, so they haven't made a move on us yet. If they really give up searching, I'm afraid the two of us won't be far from death. Chapter 2998. I don't expect to find those two guys anymore. Maybe they have already left Emerald Island. Deng Liang waved his hand. He was extremely depressed. He hadn't rested for many days. He was tired and desperate. He couldn't believe that he would fall to such a state in the end. Deng Liang, if we continue to stay here, we will only die. Why don't the two of us escape? If we can escape, we might have a chance to live. Kong Wei's eyes lit up as he suggested. Hearing this, Deng Liang's eyes also lit up, but it was quickly extinguished. With just the two of us, it will be difficult to escape. Once we are caught, we will be traitors. It won't be easy even if we want to die. Kong Wei seemed to have thought of the final fate of traitors. He couldn't help but shiver and shrink his neck. Instead of being tortured like that, it would be better to commit suicide. In that case, we have no other way. We can only try our best to find those two guys. Kong Wei said. Deng Liang nodded. Let's hurry up and find them. If we find them, we can still atone for our crimes. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen walked in the dark. The members of the heaven-shaking faction were very obvious. It was because of their usual arrogant style that they were wearing the same clothes. At a glance, Bailey Hongzhuang and Kang Wei could see many members of the heaven-shaking faction. However, most of these members were gathered in a group. They seemed to be searching, but in fact, they were chatting and having fun. They didn't pay attention to the search. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching looked at each other. With so many people gathered together, it was not convenient for them to make a move. They could only continue to look for small targets. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang and Kang Wei suddenly found two different members of the heaven-shaking faction. Compared to the other members who were relaxed and careless, these two members were desperately looking for traces of the murderer. They looked as if they couldn't wait to dig 3 feet into the ground to find the murderer. Bewitching looked around. These two members of the heaven-shaking faction were far away from the others, and there was no one nearby. They were excellent candidates. These two fellows will do. If we make a move here, we won't be noticed by others. It's very convenient. Bewitching's eyes flashed with a deep blue light. Their plan to deal with the heaven-shaking faction would start with these two people. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and a smile appeared on her face. I've finally found 2 easy targets. In the next second, the powder in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand slowly drifted down with a faint fragrance, like a flower blooming in the night. Neither of them was as strong as the other, so they could only use this method to knock the other out. Deng Liang and Kang Wei were trying their best to find traces of Bailey Hongzhuang when they suddenly smelled a charming fragrance. They couldn't help but take a deep breath. They didn't have time to rest these days. Their bodies were already stinking. Now that they smelled this fragrance, they felt a lot more comfortable. I don't know where this fragrance is coming from. It smells really good. Kang Wei narrowed his eyes. Smelling this fragrance, he really wanted to relax. Chapter 2999. When Kang Wei saw the faces of these two figures, he couldn't help but be stunned. He then rubbed his eyes, thinking that he was seeing things. But soon he realized that he wasn't seeing things, and his whole body became excited. Deng Liang, it's these two guys. We found them. Deng Liang's expression wasn't much better than Kang Wei's. They had been searching for so long that they were almost in despair. They didn't expect that these two figures would appear in front of them like this. This was like a dying man finally finding a life-saving straw, and his whole body was excited to the extreme. It's really these two guys. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching saw the two guys in front of them, they also felt a little helpless. Could this be considered as enemies meeting on a narrow road? Previously, they only noticed that these two guys were alone on the eaves, but they didn't see their true appearance. Now that they looked at them, they recognized that these were the guys who forced them to eat the truth pill in the square before. If it weren't for these two guys, they wouldn't have been chased everywhere. However, it was a blessing in disguise. Although they had experienced a lot of danger, now it gave them a chance to take revenge on the heaven-shaking faction. It could only be said that it was a coincidence. However, they didn't expect that it would be so coincidental that the two targets they found just happened to be these two guys. That's great. We finally found the two of you. Deng Liang's face was full of smiles. As long as we capture the two of you, we can atone for our crimes, Deng Liang's face instantly turned red. Previously, they felt as if they had fallen into hell, but now that they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching, they felt as if they had risen to heaven. The heavens would never bar one's way. The heavens still didn't intend to take their lives, so they gave them such a good opportunity. I told you that the two of us wouldn't be so unlucky. We will definitely be blessed with good fortune, Kang Wei couldn't hide the excitement on his face. He even felt that as long as he brought these two guys back, not only would he be able to atone for his crimes, he might even get some rewards. One must know that in these few days, they had been ridiculed by everyone. Now, they could finally hold their heads high. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching looked at each other. In their hearts, they could roughly guess that these two guys had been having a hard time in the Zhentian faction recently. At this moment, they had only seen them and had not yet figured out what the situation was, but they were already so excited. This was a bit too ridiculous. I say, you two can stop dreaming. Bailey Hongzhuang said. Deng Liang and Kang Wei laughed. Liang, Last time you escaped from our hands, this time, you won't have the chance to leave this place. Looking at the excited Deng Liang in front of him, Di Beichen's eyes showed a touch of sympathy. Today, it is not the two of us who want to escape, but the two of you have no chance to leave. As soon as these words came out, Deng Liang and Kang Wei couldn't help but be stunned. They didn't understand what Di Beichen meant. The next moment, Kang Wei couldn't help but touch his head and said, why do I feel a little dizzy? Chapter 3000. Bang, bang. The sound of two people falling to the ground rang out as Deng Liang and Kang Wei fell to the ground one after another. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen didn't plan to fight with the other party. They only appeared in front of Deng Liang and Kang Wei after knowing that the other party had no chance of fighting with them after being drugged. However, Deng Liang and Kang Wei didn't even realize that they had been drugged. Perhaps it was because they had suffered too much recently that they didn't even realize that they had been drugged. Speaking of which, these two guys are really unlucky. Xiao He sat on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder and looked at the two guys who had fallen unconscious on the ground. She couldn't help but shake her head and felt that it was a little funny. They must have had a hard time in the Zhentian faction these days. The others have already given up on searching and started playing around. Only the two of them are still desperately searching. Xiao Bai nodded. Isn't that great? We can finally be free. Xiao He raised her eyebrows. Bailey Hongzhuang also looked at the two figures on the ground. It could only be said that this was an ill-fated relationship. Di Beichen, speaking of which, using the two of them to frame others might be more effective than using other cultivators. A bright light flashed through Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes. She seemed to have thought of something and the smile on her face widened a little. Hearing this, Di Beichen thought for a moment and nodded. You're right. Although these two guys have been very poor recently, there are still many people on Emerald Island who are paying attention to them. If they were found to have pills that could control people's minds, then the Zhentian faction would really have no way to defend themselves. Xiao He and Xiao Bai looked at each other and couldn't help but sympathize with these two guys. Speaking of which, these two guys were really too loyal to their duties. They had to ask so many detailed questions and in the end, they were even branded as traitors of the Zhentian faction. This was really a little funny. Di Beichen looked at the sky and said, It's getting late. Gang leader Yi and the others should have had enough. Let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Let's go. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang put Deng Liang and Kang Wei into her chaos ring. Then she set off with Di Beichen to the place where Yi Lifei and the others were having their meal. Inside the room. Gang leader Liang, you have to drink more. We haven't gotten together in a long time. Yi Lifei helped Liang Qinghui fill up his cup. Liang Qinghui's face was already red, and his slightly narrowed eyes revealed his drunkenness. Gang leader Yi, you're too polite. Out of all the gangs, you're the one I admire the most. Gang leader Liang is young and promising. I'm already old. I'm no longer competitive. Yi Lifei shook his head and sighed. Liang Qinghui's expression turned serious. Gang leader Yi, you're belittling yourself. On Emerald Island, your Cyan Great Gang is the #1 faction. Who dares to disagree with that? However, the Zhentian faction's recent actions have been a little too arrogant. Emerald Island isn't even within their sphere of influence. They just had to use the excuse of searching for the murderer to set up camp here. I really can't stand it anymore. Gang leader Yi, Gao Hanchuan's actions are challenging the dignity of your Cyan Great Gang. Chapter 3001. If it was my brother who was killed, I definitely wouldn't let the opponent go. Now that Gao Hanchun has explained the reason, if I still refuse, it would be too unreasonable. Yi Lifei slowly said, Gang leader Yi, you are too loyal. In my opinion, Gao Hanchun knows your temperament, so he deliberately made up such a reason. The Heaven-Shaking faction has existed on Penglai Island for a long time, but I have never heard of Gao Hanchun having any brothers. All of this is fake. I feel that the Heaven-Shaking faction's rapid development is really strange. Maybe the rumor is true. They used a pill to control people's hearts to forcibly develop. Otherwise, how could they recruit so many gang members in such a short period of time? Liang Qinghui's face was full of disbelief. He had established the Cloud Sun Gang for a long time. As the gang leader, he knew very well that it was not an easy thing to develop a gang's strength. The Heaven-Shaking faction's development in the past 2 years was really too enviable. He believed that there must be some reason behind it, otherwise it would not have developed to such a state. Yi Lifei looked at the slightly drunk Liang Qinghui in front of him, and secretly sneered. He already knew that Liang Qinghui was jealous and dissatisfied with the Heaven-Shaking faction. Today he wanted to borrow Liang Qinghui's hand to completely blow up the matter. This shouldn't be, right? Yi Lifei lowered his voice, his face full of suspicion. This pill to control people's hearts is not so easy to get. What's more, this is just a rumor. There is no evidence at all. Gang leader Liang, you can't slander the Heaven-Shaking faction like this. Hearing Yi Lifei speak for the Heaven-Shaking faction, Liang Qinghui was even more unconvinced. If this kind of thing has no evidence, how can it be groundless? Not only me, but now many gangs have the same suspicion. The Heaven-Shaking faction is becoming more and more arrogant. Their confidence must be related to this. Gang leader Yi, your Great Saiyan gang is the biggest force on Emerald Island. As long as you are willing to stand up, my Cloud Sun Gang and other forces will definitely support you. So what if the Heaven-Shaking faction is developing well? Emerald Island is not something they can touch as they wish. Looking at Liang Qinghui's agitated appearance, Yi Lifei comforted him. Gang leader Liang, don't be impatient. It's not that I don't know what you are thinking, but there is no evidence. We can't slander others, otherwise it will be our fault. In my opinion, let's forget about this matter for the time being. I still don't believe that the Heaven-Shaking faction would use such a despicable method. Seeing Yi Lifei's words, Liang Qinghui was somewhat anxious, and hurriedly said, Gang leader Yi, what if we find evidence? Gang leader the Heaven-Shaking sects, then, the harm our interests will naturally harm our interests sects not. Sizes, rights. Hearing Yi Lifei's words, Liang Qinghui immediately downed the wine in his cup and said heroically, I'm relieved to hear Faction Master Ye's words. Heaven's Net has a long arm. I will definitely find the evidence of Zhentian faction. Chapter 3002. At this moment, the sound of birds chirping came from outside the door. It didn't sound like much, but if one listened carefully, one would notice that there was a certain rhythm to the chirping. However, it was obvious that Liang Qinghui, who was drunk and thinking about how to find evidence of the Zhentian faction, didn't notice this at all. After hearing the chirping of birds, Yi Lifei's eyes couldn't help but brighten. He turned to look at Liang Qinghui, who was almost drunk, and said, Faction leader Liang, it's getting late. Why don't we go back? Hearing this, Liang Qinghui nodded. Okay, I have to hurry up and find evidence of the Zhentian faction. We can't let them continue to be so arrogant. Yi Lifei, Liang Qinghui, and their men walked out of the house together and slowly walked outside. However, just as they walked out of the house, they saw 4 figures not far away. 2 of them were carrying 2 unconscious guys. Although they didn't know what was going on, they knew at a glance that it was definitely not a good thing. What's going on? Liang Qinghui opened his eyes wide and looked ahead. However, he was slightly drunk and couldn't understand what was going on. Who is it? Yi Lifei shouted sternly. Hearing Yi Lifei's shout, the 2 people carrying the 2 guys couldn't help but panic. They looked back at Yi Lifei and the others, and then looked at the 2 guys on their shoulders. They were completely flustered. Go and take a look. Yi Lifei hurriedly called his men. At this time, the people of the Yunyang faction also saw the appearance of the 2 people not far away. Suddenly, a look of surprise appeared on their faces. Aren't those 2 guys the people the Zhentian faction has been looking for recently? That's right. It's the 2 of them. Everyone immediately became excited. Originally, even if the incident happened in the square that day, not everyone had seen the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and Liang Qinghui. However, the recent search by the Zhentian faction was really too big. They even drew portraits of the 2 people and pasted them all over the Emerald Island. Therefore, everyone felt that the 2 faces were very familiar. With just a glance, they immediately recognized them. When the 2 of them realized that the other party had recognized them, They immediately abandoned the two fellows on their backs and quickly ran away. The cultivators of Great Cyan Gang and Cloud Sun Gang quickly chased after them. Liang Qinghui, who was originally drunk to the point of not being very clear-headed, instantly sobered up after knowing that the two people in front of him were the people the heaven-shaking gang was looking for. We must catch those two guys. Yi Lifei was also a little startled after seeing this scene. He had heard some of Bailey Hongzhuang's plan before, but he didn't expect that the two people in front of him weren't Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching, but were the two people the heaven-shaking faction was looking for, which surprised him greatly. After leaving the two behind, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching turned a corner and entered the Chaos Ring. When the cultivators from the Great Cyan Gang and the Cloud Sun Gang caught up to them, they realized that the entire alley was empty. There was no trace of the two at all. The speed of these two guys is really fast. They disappeared in the blink of an eye. They were clearly not far in front of us just now. How come we can't see them in such a short time? Chapter 3003. When the cultivators of Great Cyan Gang and Yunyang Gang returned, Liang Qinghui immediately went up to them and asked, "Did you catch them?" Hearing Liang Qinghui's words, a look of guilt flashed across the faces of the cultivators. "Sectmaster, the other party's speed is simply too fast. We've already chased after them as fast as we can, but they still managed to escape." Liang Qinghui couldn't help but frown. Damn it. If we catch those two guys, we'll be able to know the truth. Yi Lifei's face also became gloomy. Those two should be newcomers to Penglai Island. With so many of you working together, you still can't catch them? Reporting to gang leader, those two guys ran away like a wisp of smoke. I think that's why the heaven-shaking faction hasn't been able to catch them. Yi Lifei nodded. That's true. If those two guys were really so easy to catch, the heaven-shaking faction would have caught them long ago. They wouldn't have waited until now. As Yi Lifei's voice fell, Liang Qinghui's face looked better, but the annoyance in his heart still couldn't dissipate. He had previously said that he must find evidence of the heaven-shaking faction. Now that the evidence had appeared in front of him, he didn't grasp such a good opportunity. One could imagine the unhappiness in his heart. "Let's go and see who those two people are," Yi Lifei said. Liang Qinghui and the others immediately walked up. They were really curious about who those two guys who had been hiding from the pursuit were carrying. Logically speaking, in this situation, they should be hiding and shouldn't come out again. Once they were caught by the heaven-shaking faction, they would be finished. When everyone walked up to the two people, Yi Lifei was able to determine their identities through their clothes. These two people are wearing the clothes of the heaven-shaking faction. They should be from the heaven-shaking faction. Could it be that those two guys are being chased by the heaven-shaking faction and want to take revenge on them? Yi Lifei lowered his voice and spoke slowly, revealing a trace of surprise and astonishment. If that's really the case, then these two people are really audacious. However, when Liang Qinghui saw the faces clearly, he could not help but widen his eyes and ask in shock, "Aren't these two fellas the ones who made people consume true nature pills that day?" "That's right. Master, it's these two guys." The cultivators of the Yunyang Gang answered one after another. Yi Lifei raised his eyebrows and looked at Liang Qinghui in confusion. "What do you mean?" Seeing Yi Lifei's confusion, Liang Qinghui couldn't help but explain, "Gang Master Yi, there's something you don't know. These two are the heaven-shaking faction cultivators who forced the two disciples to take true chi pills a few days ago in the square. The reason heaven-shaking faction used the mind-controlling pill was also because of them. I've always suspected that the pill the two of them forced the newcomers to take that day was not a truth pill at all, but a pill used to control people's hearts. However, the heaven-shaking faction has always denied it, so we don't have any evidence." "I see." Yi Lifei nodded and suddenly understood. "So, those two fellows are indeed here to seek revenge on these two people?" Chapter 3004. Hearing Liang Qinghui's words, Yi Lifei's face also showed a touch of agreement. After this period of time, he was more and more optimistic about Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Any cultivator who came to Penglai Island had some ability, But because this place was a gathering of heroes, his vision had also become a lot higher. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's performance was definitely outstanding among all the newcomers. He was sure that as long as they wandered around Penglai Island for a period of time, their future achievements would definitely be incomparable to ordinary people. If it wasn't for the Jintian faction causing trouble for them, their journey to Penglai Island would have been much smoother. If there's a chance, it would be good to recruit these two people to our Yunyang faction. After drinking, Liang Qinghui spoke without the usual scruples. He had been unhappy with the Jintian faction for a long time. If there was a chance to make them unhappy, he naturally wouldn't refuse. When that time comes, not only would he let these two fellows join his Yunyang faction, he would also give them a good position. It would be best if they could make Gao Hanchun and the others jump in anger. Yi Lifei laughed and shook his head. If they really join the Yunyang faction, then you will be facing real trouble. Gao Hanchun and the others will definitely go and ask for them. Moreover, with their status and ability, how could they possibly join the Yunyang faction? Liang Qinghui naturally knew that this idea of his was very difficult to achieve because their Yunyang faction was not as powerful as the Jintian faction. If the Jintian faction really came to ask for them, they probably couldn't refuse. After all, once they fought, they would inevitably be at a disadvantage. It was precisely because of this that he felt even more sullen in his heart. Since we have found these two fellows, why don't we check what kind of elixir they have on them? Liang Qinghui's face was full of unwillingness. He didn't believe that the Jintian faction would do things without leaving any evidence behind. Deng Liang and Kang Wei had already become dead pigs under the influence of the drug. In their sleep, they didn't know anything about the outside world. Liang Qinghui waved his hand, and the cultivators of the Yunyang faction immediately took the Qinkuan bags from Deng Liang and Kang Wei. Soon, they handed 2 white porcelain bottles to Liang Qinghui. Sect Master, look. Liang Qinghui took the 2 white porcelain bottles and saw that there was a small piece of paper on top of the commonly used white porcelain bottles. Impressively, the 3 words "True Spirit Pill" were written on it. After opening the white porcelain bottle, Liang Qinghui took a whiff and couldn't help but frown. Because the taste of this True Heart Pill was clearly different from what he knew. The True Qi Pill was a pill that was often used on Penglai Island. They were all very familiar with it. Logically speaking, if it really was a True Qi Pill, Liang Qinghui would definitely be able to tell at first glance. However, the pill in this white porcelain bottle was clearly a little strange. Thinking of this, Liang Qinghui hurriedly handed the white porcelain bottle to Yi Lifei. His slightly red face was filled with a hint of seriousness. "Gang leader Yi, there's something wrong with this True Qi pill." Hearing Liang Qinghui's words, Yi Lifei was also stunned for a moment. He took the white porcelain bottle and carefully smelled it, and his brows wrinkled. This pill fragrance seems to be different from the pill fragrance of the True Heart pill. Seeing that Yi Lifei's judgment was the same as his, Liang Qinghui immediately became spirited. "I already said that there was a problem with the heaven-shaking faction's pills. Now Gang Master Yi should believe me, right?" Chapter 3005. Maybe they ran out of True Qi pills, so they took other pills along the way. How is that possible? Liang Qinghui frowned. He had already determined everything in his heart. If that's really the case, then it's a bit far-fetched for the two of them to be so consistent. Hearing this, Yi Lifei's expression also changed a bit, and he said in a deep voice, "Clan leader Liang, we still don't know what kind of pill this is, so let's not make a judgment for the time being. Why don't we go find an alchemist first, and let him judge what kind of effect this pill has, then we can make a plan. What do you think?" Liang Qinghui also calmed down a bit. Meeting Yi Lifei's deep eyes, he nodded. "All right. Clan leader Yi, this matter needs someone to testify. If I do it alone, I'm afraid it will arouse suspicion. Why don't we go find an alchemist together? This way, if the result is really as I think, you can also be a witness." Liang Qinghui's eyes flashed with excitement. He had waited for so long and finally had the chance to deal with the heaven-shaking faction. He absolutely could not make any mistakes in the process. Even though he did not know what kind of pill was in the white porcelain bottle, He had a strong premonition in his heart that this pill was probably a pill that could control people's hearts. Yi Lifei's expression changed slightly, his expression solemn and serious. All right. Before we know the result, we should not spread this matter out for the time being. Otherwise, if something goes wrong, the heaven-shaking faction will have something on you. Liang Qinghui cupped his hands. Then thank you, clan leader Yi. We have been good friends for so many years. These things are what we should do. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching returned to the Green Great Gang after completing everything. Shengguan Yingying and Wen Ziren also heaved a sigh of relief when they saw the two of them return safely. Is everything done? Bewitching nodded. We have done what we should do. Next, it will depend on clan leader Ye's ability. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. Their plan was flawless, and she believed that there wouldn't be any problems. Liang Qinghui was also the witness they had specially found because Liang Qinghui and Gao Hanchun had always hated each other. If there was a chance to deal with Gao Hanchun, Liang Qinghui would definitely spare no effort. In this way, Yi Lifei had become a witness, and he had pushed all the blame away from the Qinghong gang. This was what it meant to kill with a borrowed knife. That gang leader Liang is an impulsive person to begin with. Now that he's drunk, I'm sure he'll fall for it. Let's just wait for the good news, Ziren said with a smile. The four of them looked at each other and smiled. The heaven-shaking faction would soon suffer the consequences of their actions. Yi Lifei and Liang Qinghui immediately went to find a trustworthy alchemist and gave the pill to the alchemist for verification. The alchemist's verification speed was very fast, and it didn't take long for him to verify the medicinal effects of this medicinal pill. However, after discovering the medicinal effects, the alchemist's face couldn't help but suddenly change. Seeing this scene, Liang Qinghui could not resist asking, "Is there a problem with this medicinal pill?" Chapter 3006. Control people? Yi Lifei raised his voice. The pharmacist nodded. Yes, this pill has the power to bewitch people, and it contains a substance that can make people addicted to it. It's impossible to leave it. Sect masters, where did these pills come from? The effect of this pill is no different from using poison to control people, but it's difficult to detect, making it even more difficult to escape. Although I've heard of pills with this effect, it's the first time I've seen one. As the pharmacist's voice fell, Yi Lifei's face was filled with shock. At this moment, it wasn't an act, but a true shock. Previously, when Bailey Hongzhuang told him that she had such a dan, he was very surprised. But now, after the explanation of the alchemist, he knew that the effect of this dan was so powerful. When he thought that Bailey Hongzhuang even had such a dan, he felt more and more that Bailey Hongzhuang was terrible and powerful. As long as the effects of this pill were revealed, it would inevitably cause a great uproar. When that time came, heaven-shaking faction would have a hard time. Liang Qinghui's expression wasn't much better than Yi Lifei's, but compared to shock, he was more angry. Leader Yi, I've already said that heaven-shaking faction's growth in the past 2 years is too strange. They must have used some special method, but you didn't believe me. Now you should believe me, right? As long as they let people take this pill, they can only be controlled. Their methods are so despicable, how can we compare to them? No wonder they're so arrogant, I completely understand now. Yi Lifei's face was gloomy, and there was a hint of pain in his voice. I really didn't expect them to use such a despicable method. I don't know how many people they've used this method to control. We really can't tolerate this. Liang Qinghui nodded repeatedly. Heaven-shaking faction thought they'd done it flawlessly, hiding for so long without being discovered, but now death is at hand. Thinking of this, Liang Qinghui couldn't help but feel excited. He had endured for so long and finally had the chance to deal with the heaven-shaking faction. After hearing the conversation between Liang Qinghui and Yi Lifei, the alchemist was completely dumbfounded. He didn't expect that this pill would be related to the shaking heaven faction. At this moment, when he thought about the rumors, he didn't think that there was anything wrong with it. On the contrary, he almost subconsciously believed all of this. Gang leader Liang, let's notify the other factions tomorrow. I think we need to let everyone know about this. At the same time, we need to confirm it. Yi Lifei did not lose his composure because of his momentary shock. Instead, he thought about what to do next. Sect Master Yi, you are the sect master of our Emerald Island's leading force. Naturally, I will listen to your arrangements. That's good. None of us can spread the news today to avoid alerting the enemy. We'll make plans tomorrow. All right. It was already late at night, and almost everyone had already fallen asleep. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had been waiting in the room. Suddenly, a familiar sound of footsteps came from outside the house. Xiren had already opened the door before the other person could knock. Chapter 3007. Young Master D, you guys are really amazing. The effect of this pill is really shocking. Yi Lifei's face was filled with joy. Ever since the heaven-shaking faction started to make trouble for him, he had been looking for a chance to fight back, but he never found the right opportunity. Now, he was almost certain that after tomorrow, the heaven-shaking faction's reputation would be greatly reduced, and he would become the target of all the forces. At that time, even if the heaven-shaking faction's strength was not weak, they would definitely be expelled from the Emerald Island. Not only that, he would also find a way to let everyone join forces to attack the heaven-shaking faction and take advantage of this opportunity to wipe them out in one fell swoop. Looking at the smile on Yi Lifei's face, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others already knew that their judgment was right and the plan was successful. Does gang leader Liang have any doubts? Bewitching asked in a deep voice. No, Liang Qinghui believes everything that happened today and has no doubts about me at all. Tomorrow, he will be the one to tell the other gang leaders about this matter, and I will only be a witness. Yi Lifei smiled faintly. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Gang leader Yi, this is only the first step to success. Next, we will need to use some methods to make the heaven-shaking faction be convicted. You must find someone trustworthy. If there are any more traitors, then this plan will be completely ruined. Second young Master D, don't worry, I will never let this happen a second time. Yi Lifei's eyes were fierce and resolute. He had experienced this kind of stupid decision once before, and if there was a second time, then he deserved to die. That's good. Bailey Hongzhuang trusted Yi Lifei very much. Being able to become a leader in a place like Penglai Island was enough to prove Yi Lifei's ability. He should have a better way to deal with these traitors. The next day, Yi Lifei and Liang Yonghui immediately notified the various forces of the Emerald Island. Their actions were very secretive, and they hid it from everyone in the heaven-shaking faction. Gang leader Yi, is what gang leader Liang said true? Did the heaven-shaking faction really use this kind of pill to recruit members? After hearing Liang Yonghui's words, everyone's faces were filled with shock. Yi Lifei nodded. This pill was indeed found on the bodies of the heaven-shaking faction's members. Gang leader Liang and I found it together and found an alchemist to appraise it. Everyone can take a look at this pill, but I can't rule out the possibility of framing someone else. In my opinion, the Zhentian faction is definitely not doing this kind of thing for no reason. Their means are so despicable. Under the guise of looking for the murderer, they are recruiting members on our Emerald Island. This is simply contempt for all of us. This is absolutely intolerable. That's right. Originally, I quite admired Gao Hanchuan's ability, but I didn't expect that he had been using these crooked methods. We can't allow them to continue like this. We must make this matter public and expel those bastards from the heaven-shaking faction from the Emerald Island. The leaders couldn't help but express their stance. The recent actions of the heaven-shaking faction had already made them unable to tolerate it. In fact, they only needed a name to unite everyone. As for what the heaven-shaking faction was like, they didn't care. Chapter 3008. At this time, a faction leader stood out and voiced his opinion. Gao Hanchuan's Zhentian faction was getting more and more powerful. If they couldn't produce solid evidence, Gao Hanchun would definitely deny it. Once it was overturned, it would be very disadvantageous for them. If finding such elixirs on their disciples isn't solid evidence, then what should we do? Why don't we catch a few more Zhentian faction members tonight and see if they still have such elixirs on them? A faction leader said, if we also find such elixirs on the other faction members, then no matter how Gao Hanchun quibbles, it would be meaningless. As soon as he said that, everyone nodded. Let's be witnesses together. Yi Lifei's eyes quietly flashed with a faint light. There were several white porcelain bottles in his Qiankuan bag. These were all given to him by Bailey Hongzhuang, and all of them were elixirs that could control people's minds. If they wanted to turn this framing into irrefutable evidence, the only way they could do it was to frame him multiple times. The first discovery might be a coincidence, but if they were to be discovered every time, then it wouldn't be a coincidence. As for how to frame him, he had his own methods. At night, Yi Lifei and the other faction leaders gathered together. They wanted to take advantage of the night to verify everything. Each of them sent out a cultivator to capture the members of the heaven-shaking faction. After knocking them out, they would bring them back without anyone noticing. It's late, you guys should set off. Yi Lifei looked at the few cultivators who were prepared in front of him, and his gaze quietly landed on his trusted aide. This person used to be a thief, and his technique could be said to be amazing. It would be difficult for ordinary people to hide from others and put things into someone's Qiankuan bag. However, if it was him, it might not be so easy. Whether or not today's plan would succeed depended on him. That person nodded without batting an eyelid, promising to complete this mission. Just as Yi Lifei and the others were working together to verify everything, Gao Hanchun and the others were completely unaware. I'm afraid that the two guys we're looking for have already left Emerald Island. After searching for so long, there's no news at all. Our brothers are gradually getting tired. Lu Jiangong's face showed a touch of helplessness. They had been searching here for nearly 10 days. Not to mention his brothers, even he felt that there was no hope. However, we've been developing well on Emerald Island with the help of this matter. Why don't we take advantage of this opportunity to set up a branch here? How's Yi Lifei recently? Gao Hanchun asked with a calm expression. His body's condition seems to be getting worse, but he's still pretending like before. But he's powerless. Lu Jiangang replied. The most important thing is to familiarize ourselves with the terrain of Emerald Island. The 3-month period would soon be over. Instead of leaving now, they might as well stay here. Chapter 3009. Following Guijun's words, Gao Hanchun couldn't help but squint his eyes and take a deep look at Guijun. Why do you think so? I'm sure Big Brother also has the same conjecture. Guijun looked indifferent. The entire Emerald Island is only so big. We have already searched all the places we can find, but we haven't found any trace of them. This is very strange in itself. I don't believe that these two newcomers can escape from under our noses, so the only place they can be is the places we haven't searched. Gao Hanchun picked up the teacup and took a sip of tea, but he didn't comment. Those two guys are just newcomers. Logically speaking, there is no need for any faction to help them. The only reason they help is because they are dissatisfied with our heaven-shaking faction. Guijun's eyes flashed with wisdom. Although he was usually very lecherous, it didn't mean that he was a good-for-nothing. On the contrary, his mind was very clear. But we have no way to search for other factions. Lu Jiangang frowned. After Guijun's reminder, he felt that Guijun's words were very reasonable. Guijun, which force do you think will take them in? Gao Hanchun asked without batting an eyelid. Guijun hesitated for a moment, then said, Great Saiyan faction. Gao Hanchun's eyes suddenly became sharp. Yi Lifei can't even take care of himself now. Is he really in the mood to do such a thing? It's precisely because Yi Lifei's condition is getting worse and worse that our insatiable greed makes him even more unhappy. Perhaps he's doing this because he wants us to be ostracized by other forces. No matter what, this isn't a good thing for us, Guijun continued. Gao Hanchun slammed the teacup on the table. That old guy, even if he is about to die, he still can't forget to make trouble for us. Lu Jiangang looked at Gao Hanchun and Guijun in a daze. It seemed that at this moment, they had already determined the ins and outs of the whole matter. Second brother, Go and find those two fellows from our gang, Gao Hanchun said. Lu Jiangang quickly nodded. Okay. After a long while, Lu Jiangang came back with a gloomy face. Big brother, I asked the brothers in the faction. They haven't seen those two guys since yesterday. Where did they go? Can't you find it? These two fellows have made a big mistake. Recently, they have been ostracized by everyone, so they have always been together. I don't care too much about it. Now, I don't know where they have run off to. Lu Jiangang frowned. Could they have run away? Gui Jun shook his head. Right now, the entire Emerald Island is under our control. They don't have the ability to escape. Second brother, send someone to search again. Gao Hanchuan's eyes were sinister and complicated, making it hard for others to guess his thoughts. Vaguely, he had a bad premonition today. This was his intuition. Although there was no reason for it, it had helped him a lot in the past. I'll give the order right away. At this moment, Yi Li Fei and the other gang leaders were looking at the captured heaven-shaking faction members in front of them. They had captured a total of 5 people. After a round of searching, they found the same pill on 3 of them. The evidence was irrefutable. Chapter 30:10. Now, Zhentian faction has no way to quibble. Liang Yonghui's face was full of anger. Although not every cultivator had it, 3 out of 5 people had it. What else was there to explain? This proved that it was a publicly acknowledged secret in the entire Zhentian faction. Faction leader Yi, now that things have come to this, we can't continue to sit and wait for death. The reason that Zhentian faction has been using is just a pretense to recruit members. With this name, they can almost recruit all the newcomers to Emerald Island to Zhentian faction. I was wondering why Zhentian faction was so interested in newcomers recently. Many newcomers have just arrived at Penglai Island and don't know anything about this place. Plus, they don't have any background. They can take advantage of this loophole. Not only that, our Emerald Island is the closest island to the outside world. Almost all the cultivators will come here. That's why Zhentian faction is so envious of our Emerald Island. In a short period of time, everyone had already connected all the dots. They felt that Zhentian faction was really ambitious. They had been deceived for so long. If it wasn't for this coincidental discovery, they really didn't know when they would have known all this. If Gao Hanchun were here to hear all of this, he would probably be completely dumbfounded. He clearly wasn't that complicated. These guys had completely helped him fabricate a brand new version. Moreover, this series of events was extremely logical. Even he couldn't help but believe it when he heard it. Let's go tell the world now. Our Qinghong faction will not tolerate this kind of thing. Yi Li Fei said righteously. We will not tolerate it either. Everyone voiced their agreement. As the largest local force on Emerald Island, the Great Cyan Gang's rallying power was not small to begin with. Previously, Yi Li Fei was also unwilling to pay attention to this matter because of his deteriorating physical condition. Now that he had a chance to continue living and knew that the reason his body became like this was all because of Gao Hanchun, he naturally spared no effort in dealing with Gao Hanchun. Yunyang faction and the other faction leaders agreed. Emerald Island was only a small piece of land. They had been around for many years and were absolutely unwilling to let Zhentian faction join them. With the Great Cyan Gang and the other major forces spreading the news of the Zhentian Gang using despicable methods to recruit members spread throughout the Emerald Island in a short period of time. Once the news spread, all the cultivators on Emerald Island were shocked. Previously, everyone had their suspicions, but now that all the major forces had come forward to prove this rumor, the evidence was irrefutable. I already guessed that the rumor was true. The heaven-shaking faction is getting more and more arrogant. The Great Cyan Gang and the other major powers have all stood out. I'm afraid that the heaven-shaking gang won't be able to stay on the Emerald Island any longer. The further they scram, the better. Recently, the entire Emerald Island has been in chaos because of them. I think they are already very unhappy. All of a sudden, all the cultivators on Emerald Island despised the heaven-shaking faction. All kinds of denunciations erupted. This also proved that the heaven-shaking faction's actions during this period of time were really infuriating. Chapter 30:11. After Gao Hanchun discovered that several of his subordinates had disappeared one after another, the ominous premonition in his heart grew stronger. It was impossible for his subordinates to disappear on their own. Moreover, 7 of them had disappeared in one go. It could only be said that someone had begun to make a move against the Zhentian faction. After discovering this, Gao Hanchun immediately gathered the members of the Zhentian faction. He could not let everyone continue to be scattered like this. Otherwise, if they were to be killed one by one, it would be really troublesome. Damn it! Haven't we been safe for so many days? Who on earth has suddenly made a move against our Zhentian faction? Lu Jiangong's face was filled with unspeakable anger. Ever since their Zhentian faction had become stronger and stronger, it had been a long time since anyone dared to do such a thing to them. Hearing Lu Jiangong's words, Gui Jun lazily glanced at him and said, "In the entire Emerald Island, other than the Qinghong faction, no one else would have such courage." The Qinghong faction was the largest faction on the Emerald Island. Although the other factions usually competed with the Qinghong faction, after they arrived, the other factions had always hoped that the Qinghong faction would stand up. However, Yi Lifei had never expressed his stance. He believed that if it were any other faction, they would not have the courage to compete with the Zhentian faction. Therefore, there was only one possibility: the Qinghong faction. A storm was brewing in Gao Hanchuan's eyes. His dignified face was filled with gloom at this moment. Yi Lifei, what a good one. He's about to lose his life, yet he still has the mind to deal with us. Big brother, what should we do now? Lu Jiangang asked. Gao Hanchuan's eyes turned sharp. Since Yi Lifei wants to cause trouble for us behind our backs, then we'll directly bring this trouble to the surface. I don't believe that old fox can continue to act in front of me. As soon as these words were spoken, the eyes of Lu Jiangang and the others brightened. They were also very dissatisfied with the existence of the Qinghong faction. Now that they had the opportunity to face them head-on, they were also very much looking forward to it. However, just as Gao Hanchun and the others were preparing to aggressively head towards the Qinghong faction, the news brought by a faction member stunned Gao Hanchun and the others. What did you say? The Great Cyan Gang and the other big gangs are saying that we're using pills to control people's hearts to recruit gang members? Lu Jiangang raised his voice, unable to hide the astonishment on his face. The news has already spread throughout the entire Emerald Island. Everyone is talking about it. Our gang members are being ostracized and suppressed. They will be cursed and scolded as soon as they go out. Gui Jun, who had been acting very indifferent all this while, could not help but stand up at this moment. Thick anger surfaced on his face. What a joke! It's too much to splash such dirty water on us. This had always been the problem that they were most worried about. They wanted to find those 2 guys to wash away all of this. Fortunately, although there had always been rumors, no one could be sure. However, now that all the major gangs had come out together to put this name on their heads, the situation was completely different. Go! Let's go to Qinghong Gang. The expression on Gao Hanchuan's face did not change. However, the arc on the corners of his mouth became increasingly cold. Faintly, a murderous aura was emitted. Chapter 30:12. After Yi Lifei and the other leaders spread the news, they didn't leave. Instead, they quietly sipped their tea. They knew very well that once the heaven-shaking faction got hold of this news, Gao Hanchun and the others would definitely come knocking on their door. Rather than regrouping, they might as well wait here for them to come. Gao Hanchun had been in a bad mood the entire way. He knew very well how much the rumors spread by the Great Cyan Gang would affect their heaven-shaking faction. If they couldn't get the Great Cyan Gang to stand up and deny this rumor, then their heaven-shaking faction would become like a rat on the street, hated by everyone. No one would accept the existence of such a gang. This meant that they would not have any reinforcements. The heaven-shaking faction had offended many forces along the way. With such a reputation, once these forces joined forces, the heaven-shaking faction would be in an extremely difficult situation. It was a matter of life and death. Gao Hanchuan's chest heaved up and down due to his anger. The thought of killing Yi Lifei and swallowing the Great Saiyan Gang kept circling in his mind. He felt that he should have made his move earlier so that there wouldn't be so much trouble. Big brother, could it be that Yi Lifei discovered that we poisoned him, so before he dies, he wants to take us down? Gui Jun's eyes flashed with a thoughtful light. He had been thinking about why Yi Lifei's attitude had changed so much. There must be some reason that they did not know about. Hearing this, Gao Hanchun narrowed his eyes. A complicated light flashed across his eyes. I haven't heard about this recently. Are the cultivators from the 100 Flowers Gate still in the Great Saiyan Gang? They are still here. They are temporarily staying in the Great Saiyan Gang. According to the news I received, Yi Lifei treats them very well. Lu Jiangang replied. That means it's not impossible. Gao Hanchun seemed to have suddenly understood something. His original anger subsided a little and he became calmer. Our method of poisoning was extremely covert. Logically speaking, it should be impossible for the other party to discover it. Could it be that these two disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate have such superb medical skills? Everything is possible. Let's go and take a look. Gao Hanchun said in a deep voice. In his opinion, Yi Lifei was already a person who was about to die. Even if Yi Lifei desperately counterattacked before his death, he would not give Yi Lifei the chance to fight to the death. As long as he had the slightest chance to overturn the rumors that Yi Lifei had spread, he would take the opportunity to swallow up the entire Green Great Gang. By then, the Emerald Island would be the heaven-shaking faction's territory. When Gao Hanchun arrived at the Qinghong Gang, he was unimpeded. Not a single cultivator from the Qinghong Gang stood out to stop him. However, this scene made Gao Hanchuan's heart sink. It seemed that the other party was prepared. As soon as Gao Hanchun walked through the door, he realized that all the leaders of the major forces on Emerald Island were here. His eyes flashed with surprise. Gang leader Yi, it seems that you already knew that I was coming, Gao Hanchun said calmly, but there was a hint of anger in his words. However, what made Gao Hanchun surprised was that Yi Lifei actually took the initiative to launch an attack. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.